Good morning from Panhandle Outdoors, America's only daily outdoor TV show. Your source for fishing, hunting, and information for folks who enjoy the great outdoors. Now sit back, relax. It's Panhandle Outdoors.
Hey, good morning. Welcome to Panhandle Outdoors. I'm Bill Allen. We're glad you're with us today. I'm sitting in for Winston Chester. Today is Monday, April the 19th, and we want to first look at the weather brought to us by Drew Pollard over at Gulf Coast Air Conditioning. Still in a good pattern. A high is going to be 73 today with a low of 56 tonight. And, we're looking at a slight chance of rain, maybe early 30% this morning, and winds shifted now back out of the north some with this front passing through. So it's going to be around 9 to 10 northeast. So should be pretty nice. Looking at the tides brought to us by, as always, Kent Forest Lawn. The low tide is at 2:02 a.m. and the high is at 3:32 p.m. So if you really like fishing a falling tide, as we do, it's going to be a great day for that. So an average water temperature now is up to about 70 degrees. Peak fishing times, there's two really high activity times today, and that's 6:20 a.m. to 8:21 a.m. and then again at 6:45 p.m. to 8:45 p.m. and with the not getting dark as soon, that should be an excellent time and something I hope to take advantage of. River readings. Apalachicola at Bluntstown, river's down at 10.5 feet, and it's kind of in a real slow fall phase right now. I don't know how much of this rain that passes through over the weekend and the end of last week is going to affect it, but it eventually will. Choctawhatchee at Caryville, by the way, is 11 feet, and that is going up. Of course, that's affected by local rain. All right, we've got today's a fishing show, so we got a special guest coming up. Stay with us. Hey, welcome back, and obviously familiar face, my good buddy, Mr. Brudnicki.
Good morning.
And so after a serious drought, in fact, since the last time we came on here and talked about fishing in Steinhatchee, the first time we fished was last week, Monday afternoon and Tuesday afternoon, because we just absolutely changed all our schedules to be out late in the afternoon fishing. Every time we could go, the wind was blowing too hard, the weather was bad, there wasn't any water in the bay, and when we couldn't go were the best times to be fishing, so we did finally make it out there. And did some serious damage on some trout. I think we fished East Bay first. Mm-hmm. You snuck out a little early one time and wound up with a pretty nice fish.
Yeah, I went out Saturday afternoon, late after I got through with my honeydews, and you couldn't go, and so I basically went by myself and got out there. Of course, it was still windy, but the first fish I caught was a nice 23-inch, really fat trout, and it was about 30 minutes afterwards, and I was drifting in one of my spots, and there was another boat. The only other boat I saw out there was in front of me a couple hundred yards. And so I said, well, do I go out there and go around him and then get in his drift because I want to drift this whole bank? And I said, no, I don't like when people do that to me, so I'm going to stay behind him. So I'm drifting behind the guy, and he can see me. He can't tell who I am. I can't tell who he is, but he can see me. And I went through the exact same spot that he had just fished, maybe 5 to 7 minutes before, and caught that big trout. And I know he was looking when I dipped down and got him. So it's one of those things where sometimes when you're courteous.
And that was Paul Brown.
That was Paul Brown. And I was rewarded. I caught a nice fish, and then I caught a few more after that were pretty nice. And it was not a bad afternoon to be by myself. But of course, you see a picture of a big trout that I had in live well, keep it alive to take a picture of it. It's hard to do it by yourself.
Yeah, it is. It's very hard.
We do crappy videos when it's
When it's
two of us. So you can imagine, sitting there almost like trying to do a selfie. But I have one of those cameras that goes on my head. And
We both do.
We both do. And as soon as we figure out
How to use
it, we're going to be able to send Jeff some really good stuff if we ever catch fish again.
Jeff's sitting back there shaking his head. He doesn't believe that. I'm not sure I do either. But so we made out Monday afternoon, went back to East Bay, left from your house, had a good tide, had a real good tide, not as much wind. Right. And so, we had a plan, and we went, almost immediately to some old haunts and went back into the marsh, with plenty of water. And Greg was staying with Paul Brown in different varieties and colors, and I was, of course, bouncing a Z-Man around, and we had a pretty steady afternoon of catching fish.
It was good. I think that we probably caught 5 or 6 reds.
Yeah.
And we got a 24-inch trout. Didn't have the shoulders on it or the girth that other fish was. It weighed less and it was an inch longer. And then we had a one that was just under 19.
Yeah.
So it's scary when you get out there and think, well, now you can only keep one fish over 19 inches in your boat, even if you got 9 people in the boat. And all of a sudden, if that one was, thank goodness it wasn't over 19, because we're a little fish hungry because we haven't been fishing, and we always put back our redfish unless they're
100%, yeah.
unless they're
99%.
unless they're gut hooked and they're not going to make it. So that was a good afternoon.
Yeah, we worked way back in as far as we could. It had started falling pretty good, and the wind was in the same direction. So we fished a lot of edges, a lot of those grass islands there where you could clearly see a current coming around it, and worked those edges really hard. And like I said, it was that it had that 24-inch trout, which was a solid trout, but we picked up the 5 or 6 reds in that afternoon, and we didn't catch any real small trout either. Most of what we were catching was pretty good size, and we had some pretty substantial fish. Both methods were very effective. When we do it like that, I'm throwing more, actually into the grass or the stand-ups, being able to work it out like that, where Greg's covering, the area that's a little more open out there for the transient fish. And we knew there were fish in there because we saw fish. We saw redfish. We did, and we went for a little bit without catching them till it turned, and it kind of got just right at that point. But anyway, we fished that just right up until dark, and it was we worked our way outside with the tide as the bait and everything was pretty solid. Migration out, and the fish were following it, of course. So then we started working the mouths and on the outside, and ran around to another spot that's especially good for that. So that was a day that the tactics worked out well. We fished back in the marsh, and then we got outside where there's a little more water where the fish were coming out. So let's go ahead and take a break right now. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. So that was the East Bay edition, and then Tuesday afternoon is the West Bay edition, and we had a solid plan set in for late in the afternoon. We probably left a little bit early just because we were anxious, but surprisingly enough, the wind did not cooperate when we first got out there.
Good Lord, it was blowing a gale.
It was. We made our way back to a place where we've caught a lot of fish, and I talked to some guys, some friends who had been catching fish back in there. So it was a combination of deeper water and marsh. We fished for an hour and a half, had one red.
Yeah, a little
23.
Little rat. Well, no, that one little rat.
Oh, that's right.
That little rat that we got up
that's
in there.
Right.
But then we didn't get a decent red until you caught that one. later on.
Yeah,
We
so,
had nothing that was.
you know, generally we try to fish to plan out, and we fished that entire area on both sides, and we fought the wind, and we just continued to keep throwing, you know, just knowing we were going to find fish in there. And at one point, even we came to the conclusion that this is not going to be where we catch the fish at. So we ran south till we could catch a good drift with the wind had come down a little bit, but headed to the north. And basically we started, you know, fishing from West Bay Point, you know, back towards the steam plant. And same thing, positioned the boat. We were in my boat this time, so we positioned the boat where, you know, I'm able to fish in the reeds and Greg's able to fish in front and the rest of it. And we continued to throw the same things. And you know, eventually, patience or blind dumb luck, and at around 5 or so, the fish decided it's feed time.
Yeah, they turned on a little bit, and the thing was, where we were, the water was really, really clear.
Oh yeah.
And you could see, and Mom said, well, you know, we'll spook them, and we did spook some before, you know, we just spook them, and all of a sudden they're gone. But we had already thrown those areas. But this time of year, it's pretty amazing, and for a lot of people, throwing a suspended bait, people will get them, and they're not cheap. They throw them, and they say, good Lord, every time I come in, I got grass. It sinks too fast, I work, and I can't work it, I can't keep it out of the grass and all that. So this is a great time of year. If you've got those suspended twitch baits, because the grass is just like crew cut height now, you know, it hasn't grown yet. So a lot of areas that you fish later on, there's going to be higher grass, and if you're not used to using that twitch bait, it sinks too fast, or whatever, you're not working it right, you'll get grass up. Well, this time of year you won't, so this is a great time to practice, and they will be in those areas, even though there may just be a little bit of grass, to go ahead and work with it and learn to use it, because the beauty part about that, and we don't even use live bait anymore, much more sporting to fish with the lures, but you can cover a tremendous amount of water. Every time you throw, it's a new area. Especially when you got the wind whipping behind your back.
New area in a hurry.
In a hurry, you know, I mean, you can, and you're covering uncharted territory. You know, even if there is somebody drifting down in front of you, you know, there's still going to be places that this particular person didn't throw. So having that kind of bait, being able to cover that kind of water, it's a lot more fun, although we do get them sometimes right next to the boat, to hook a fish far off.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll hook them and, oh Lord, and I missed them. And then don't bring it in. Leave it sit for a second and move it. Remember that big trout? He said he saw the big trout slam my lure. He goes, wow, was that you? And I go, yeah. Well,
Missed it.
And then like 3 or 4 seconds later, 10 seconds later,
Boom.
he come up and got it because that suspended bait, and I kept jerking it. So
The bite was on. When they're feeding,
there you go. Even though he slammed something that wasn't meat, he still came back and hit it. So don't get too anxious. I mean, even when you haven't fished for a while.
yeah, you know, yeah, really, no kidding. You get a little nervous about catching fish. So, but we never, you know, those of you familiar with the west side of the West Bay Point, you know, headed north, you know, there's several places where on a good tide you can get in there, and we kept looking, but we never saw any activity. You know, we didn't see mullet jumping back there. We didn't see fish striking, so we stayed on the outside to be able to fish both ways. And you know, I had the Z-Man throwing into the grass, and especially, you know, anytime there's an opening there, and one of those where we had turned the boat and Greg was up, but he got out of position. So he said, you know, we got to get down in there. So I came up there and made well, you were running my boat at the time because we'd switched at one point. So you just got out of position, and I made a really long cast. I know you've heard that over and over again, but you know, to the other side of the opening, and when I started pulling it across, you know, I got 2 or 3 bounces on that thing, and that's where, you know, that red slammed it in there. And but we caught plenty of fish on the outside. So, with the way we fish, we're able to cover open water and grassy water, and that that kind of thing is where we were going through. But from there on out, we started, the fish started biting, but we started catching them out front. I caught a 23-inch trout, I think. Greg caught a 21-inch trout, which we, were letting go. But the 4 biggest trout, total weight for those 2 afternoons, we figured at
about 18 pounds.
18 pounds. I mean, these were some big stud fish. And that's just the fish over 21 or over 20. We had 19. Some 18, 19-inch fish in there that, and we did keep a few of those fish. And we wound up over the afternoon catching not a ton, maybe 4 or 5 reds,
right,
something like that. But, so we switched tactics a little bit, and then when we got with the last one, we just stayed with it, and we just continued to fish until, they started getting right. I mean, same water, but, and that's where, with this wind and in a drift, and when you're starting to run into fish like that, they're not all stacked up, but they're kind of in the same, topographical locations. Power pole, I don't know how you live without one.
Right, it's tough.
You need to stop your drift, because with the wind, it'll blow you into the grass, it'll blow you over fish that you haven't gotten to yet. So, almost immediately when we hook up, whichever boat it is, we both have power poles, the pole goes down. And then we're able to keep that pole, if nothing else, in position so that we don't float over fish while we're playing around trying to get the fish in the boat. So very important tool, to have, and it will improve your fishing. I promise you to be able to do that. And when you put the boat in position, if you have the 2 power poles, when you put it down, it stays in that position, to cast when you're working an area, which is a big advantage. Of course, you put the 1 pole down, it's going to turn with the tide and the wind. You may or not be exactly where you want to be, but the 2 is great for that. But if you just have 1, that's fine. You get there, you hook up, put it down, work that fish, and don't mess up territory that you haven't fished yet.
Plus, if you caught one there, his brother might be around.
That's right. Or his grandfather.
And so you want to you want to go ahead and kind of milk that area a little bit, because bigger ones a lot of times will be loners, but so many times he'll hook up, we'll put the power pole down and throw, and we may fish that area for a couple minutes before we will,
and fish that out.
So
all right. So we need to go ahead and take this break real quick. We'll be right back. All right, Greg had to go take care of some city business, but we always talk about, and the most questions that I get asked about are the long cast, and how do you make the long cast, and what do you got to do? And the truthful is, you got to make a long cast. You got to get away from the boat. You got to have something you can effectively do that with. So when I'm doing that, and when I'm fishing with those plastics that I love, the Z-Man, like the jerk shad, or whatever plastic you're fishing, if you're bouncing it along or doing whatever like I love to do, well, what I've gotten it down to is I'm using this 13 fishing Omen rod. It's medium with a fast tip on it. This one is 7/7, and it's light as a feather, but it also has the backbone to be able to set the hook. So long rod is going to equal a longer cast, especially with a good fast tip on it. But what I do is I go up a little bit higher than usual. I've got the 13 fishing prototype X here, is a 4/0 size, which is, I'm either going to use 2.5 or 3 most of the time. The reason is bigger spool. So obviously the line's going to come off a little bit better. It's not as tightly, it's not a smaller spool, so you don't have as many rounds. But I've also gone to 10-pound Power Pro on this. There's no reason to have 15, 20, and all that, even though it's thin. 10 pounds going to cast longer. I'll use depending on where I'm at, I'm going to use usually 15 to 20 pound fluorocarbon. If you're in an area where there's a lot of rocks, there's a lot of oysters, you're going to be in a lot of heavy cover, you need to get up higher on your fluorocarbon to 15 or 20, and I don't usually have anything higher than that here. I know in Louisiana, Mark and those guys are fishing much heavier because that's an entirely different area. But also on the reel is save your line. If the capacity on this is 300 yards for this size, I'm going to used to I'd put 30 yards of backing on here, but I don't anymore. I'm going to put at least 150 yards of backing on here, 150 to 125. So basically I've got 100 yards of Power Pro to 125. That fills my reel up, but it also saves you a ton of money. I mean, this Power Pole, you put 300 yards or 330 yards worth of Power Pro on here, you're not ever going to use 2/3 of the line that you've got on there, and that's where all the expense is. At 100 yards, you cut, you retie, you do those kind of things. When it starts getting down, then go back to that same spool if you're buying it 300 at a time and fill it up again. So instead of once, you get twice, and of course this lasts a long time. And the other thing is the mistake that I see too many times when I go with other people or they want to talk to me about it is point this rod where you want to throw. Okay, you can't leave the rod straight up when you throw, because now you've got the line going at an angle and it creates drag. These guides should be straight in line, so the less resistance is it going to be straight out. And when you overthrow and you make this big, long, hard throw and your rod's pointed down at the end of it, well, now it's going down and it's trying to feed out, and you're creating almost a 90 at some times. So try to keep this rod in front of you. Don't reach back. When you make the throw, leave it pointed and straight and don't go past it. It'll go further. The 10 pound is plenty. It'll go further and you'll be able to get out from the boat. And with a rod with a good backbone, you have any trouble setting the hook. So I appreciate you listening today. I appreciate all your comments when we see you guys out everywhere. And you get the chance to do something good for somebody today, do it. You won't be sorry. Thank you.
Thanks for watching America's only daily outdoor TV show, Panhandle Outdoors with Winston Chester, featuring hunting, fishing, and other activities and information to help you enjoy the great outdoors. Join us next time for Panhandle Outdoors.